You shall not bear false witness. But what about when your friend gets a bad haircut and then asks if you like it? I'm Adam, and this is After the Fact. Traditionally, Christians have recognized 4 different categories of untrue statements. And I use that phrase rather than lies, because when we say the word lie, we think of something that is inherently wicked and sinful. And the point of these categories is to say that there are times when you can say something that is not strictly true without sinning. Now, the first category is truly sinful, and that's what we call the malicious lie. This is an intentional falsehood, intentional deception that is designed to cause harm or damage or distress to someone else's reputation, their relationship, their livelihood. These are actual, absolute lies, and these are not allowed in the 9th commandment. Because we must not harm our neighbors through our speech. And that's the greater principle at play behind the 9th commandment, is that sense of, is what you say harming your neighbor? Are you bringing false witness against your neighbor in a way that's going to harm them? The second category is what's called the jocular lie, or the joking lie. And this is the sort of untrue statement that is permitted because it's intended to entertain rather than harm. So for example, I just love sitting in traffic. Or perhaps saying, I can't believe you'd sit in my pew. We're never friends again. Like those sorts of statements that are obviously untrue, but obviously also a joke. And so this is the jocular lie, permitted because their goal is not to harm, but to entertain. And in fact, these sort of jocular lies can even promote closer friendships between friends. The third category is what we call the necessary lie. This would be a false statement that is necessary in order to protect someone else from harm. This is the classic lie that we think of in World War II, for example, in hiding Jews from the Nazis. It is permitted, and in fact, you should lie to an unjust authority or a wicked authority when they are attempting to do something. It is permitted and good to lie in defense of another person. We see examples of this lie specifically in Scripture. We see the Egyptian midwives who, when Pharaoh gives the command to kill all the Hebrew boys that are born, the Egyptian midwives instead lie, and they say that the Hebrew women go into labor before we can arrive to deliver the babies. We see the example of Rahab, who lies to the king of Jericho in order to protect the Israelite spies that are hiding in her household. These are clear lies, and we shouldn't mince words around that. We should be clear. These are untrue statements, and yet they are praised in Scripture. In the book of Hebrews, Rahab is praised as a figure of faith because she concealed the truth from the king of Jericho. And so these necessary lies, in order to protect the lives and livelihoods of others, these are good lies, and these are permitted. They are not violations of the 9th commandment. It is permitted to mislead unjust or wicked people in order to prevent them from accomplishing their purposes. Now, the fourth lie is what we call the polite lie. And this is not necessarily a lie per se, but it is following the customs of etiquette and saying things that you don't necessarily mean simply because it's the right thing to say in a given scenario. And so, for example, when we begin all of our letters, we begin by saying, "Dear so-and-so." Now, is the person you're writing to actually near and dear to your heart, or are they just someone that you're writing a letter to? We don't always mean dear when we say dear, and yet that is the custom of letter writing. Perhaps you sign off on a critical email to a colleague or to a teacher by saying, respectfully. You know in your heart there is not much respect for that person, and yet you still sign the email by saying respectfully. Is that true? Do you actually respect that person? Perhaps not, and yet the conventions of etiquette say that it is still good to say respectfully yours, with respect. Perhaps you're at dinner and someone says, "Oh, would you like something more?" And you say, "Oh, no thank you, I've had enough." Maybe someone asks, "Did you like the meal?" And you say, "Oh yes, it was wonderful," when really you thought the fish could have used a bit more salt or something like that. These are polite lies. They are not necessarily true, and yet they are required by etiquette. They're the sort of things, it is good to say what is good to build up relationships. It is good to say something that you don't necessarily feel in your heart because it is the custom of society. It is good, in fact, these polite lies can often remind us and require us to show respect to those to whom respect is due. Sometimes these polite lies can be a way of even upholding the fifth commandment, speaking in honoring ways even to those that we don't feel honor for in our hearts. So this is the polite lie. And it's not an outright deception. Rather, it's showing respect to someone who deserves it and following the rules of being polite. In this case, your attempt is to save face or preserve someone's reputation, give them their due deference. Your goal is not to cause harm, and therefore it doesn't violate that broader principle of the ninth commandment. We should not harm others with our words. The polite lie intends to bring more respect rather than to bring harm. The polite lie intends to diffuse a situation rather than making it more intense. The final category that doesn't really fit in any of the others, but it's this idea of the white lie that we have today. Now, there's a lot of excuses for dishonest statements that we tend to make. And we think of little white lies, small lies that don't harm anyone. They simply are a way of saving face. And so there's a lot of discourse and discussion, exactly what white lies are permitted, which white lies aren't permitted. I think that we should use a bigger heuristic. We should ask ourselves, what's the goal? When I speak any words, all of my words ought to be motivated by love of God and love of neighbor. That's what Jesus says. This is the fulfillment of all the commandments. If you can love God and love your neighbor with the way that you speak, it's probably permitted. However, a lot of our white lies often are not motivated by a love for God or neighbor. Most of our little white lies are motivated by selfish interest. Saying that we completed an assignment when actually we're just about to begin it and we'll get it done very quickly. These sorts of white lies that aren't really true, they're simply intended to protect our reputation. They have some selfish intent behind them. I'm reminded of the words of Bruce Waltke, an Old Testament commentator who said, "The righteous man will disadvantage himself for the sake of his community and those around him. The wicked man will disadvantage others for his own sake, to advantage himself." And so I think this is a good concept to have in mind when we think about the words that we say, when we think about whether it's okay or not to say something that isn't true on the surface. Is this untrue statement for my own benefit or for my neighbor's benefit? Am I advantaging others through my words, or am I taking advantage of others through the words that I say? This is the bigger picture. Our words need to build others up. Our words need to promote that which is good and true and beautiful, and that is our standard. And if we can do that, we will hardly ever break the ninth commandment.